So, how does the world's largest island, this massive, remote expanse of ice and rock, end up bringing the most powerful military alliance in history to the absolute brink of collapse? Believe it or not, this isn't some hypothetical scenario. It's the real story of a geopolitical crisis that just put Greenland at the very center of the world stage. Just listen to that. That was the message from a sitting U.S. president in January 2026. And he wasn't saying this to an adversary. He was saying it to Denmark, a founding member of NATO, a historic ally. And what was it all about? The complete and total purchase of Greenland. Yeah, you heard that right. A U.S. president threatening a fellow NATO member. It's a question that sent absolute shockwaves through capitals from Washington to Brussels. So how on earth did a fixation on what's essentially a real estate deal escalate into an existential threat to the entire post-World War II global order? To get it, we really have to break down what just happened. So it all really kicks off with this shocking ultimatum. In early 2026, years of talk and pressure finally boiled over. This wasn't just rhetoric anymore. This was a direct economic threat aimed squarely at some of America's closest allies. Okay, so here's what went down. President Trump announces he's slapping a 10% tariff on Denmark, the UK, and 6 other European allies. And the reason? Well, they had sent a small number of military personnel to Greenland for a reconnaissance mission for an upcoming NATO exercise. The White House called it a very dangerous situation and said the tariffs would stay until, in his words, a deal is reached. So why? Why this intense, high-stakes obsession with Greenland? Well, to the Trump administration, this island wasn't just a big piece of land, it was an absolutely critical prize. And the reasons really boil down to 2 key things: national security and natural resources. Okay, so on one hand, you've got the military angle. Greenland is the geostrategic linchpin of the Arctic. It's essential for missile defense, what Trump has called the Golden Dome, and it's crucial for keeping an eye on Russian ships and submarines moving through that strategic choke point, the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap. Then, on the other hand, you have the economic side. It's a potential treasure trove of rare earth minerals, the stuff you need for everything from your smartphone to advanced fighter jets. And right now, who dominates that market? China and Russia. And this post right here, it perfectly sums up the official line from the White House. This wasn't being framed as a choice or a simple real estate deal. No, this was a national security necessity. The argument was that Denmark just couldn't defend the island from Russian or Chinese ambitions, so the U.S. had to step in. Now, you might be thinking this all just blew up overnight, but nope. This crisis didn't just come out of nowhere. It was actually the final act in a years-long pursuit that just got more and more aggressive over time. It all started with what seemed like a kind of strange, off-the-cuff remark back in 2019. But after his re-election in 2024, the pressure just ramped up step by step. First, threats of tariffs. Then, refusing to rule out military force. Then he goes before Congress in the State of the Union and vows to get it one way or the other. And finally, he appoints a special envoy just for this purpose. Each step was a deliberate turn of the screw. So, faced with this incredible pressure, Denmark wasn't about to just roll over. And they weren't alone. This ultimatum triggered a massive wave of global pushback, uniting allies who saw this threat as an attack on the entire international system. Their response was loud, clear, and unified: not for sale. Right from the very first time this idea was floated back in 2019, Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, has been absolutely unequivocal. Her message has never, ever wavered. Greenland is not a piece of property that you can buy and sell. And this is so crucial. Greenland's own leaders have been just as forceful. Prime Minister Nielsen called the whole thing completely and utterly unacceptable and basically told the president to give up his fantasies. So this isn't just about Denmark's position. The people of Greenland themselves have spoken loud and clear. And the pushback went global, fast. You had leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron framing this as a matter of fundamental principle. He directly connected the intimidation over Greenland to the war in Ukraine, making it clear that European sovereignty was simply not up for debate. And this wasn't just a few isolated statements. A powerful, united front just snapped into place almost immediately. You had all 5 Nordic countries issuing a joint statement. The UK, Germany, Sweden, they all condemned the threats. The EU held a special meeting to offer its full support. Even Canada got involved, backing the core principle that you can't just change borders by making threats. Okay, so this brings us to the absolute heart of the crisis. Because when one NATO member starts threatening another NATO member, well, you're striking at the very foundation of the alliance itself. This right here, this is Article 5. It's the bedrock of NATO. The whole idea is an attack on one is an attack on all. But what happens when the potential attacker is the alliance's most powerful member? I mean, the entire concept of mutual defense just gets thrown into chaos. And look, this wasn't just an international freakout. Even back in the United States, lawmakers from both parties were sounding the alarm. This bipartisan group pointed out the terrifying paradox here. If America attacked Greenland, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, it would technically be an attack on the very alliance the U.S. is supposed to lead. And this number, 60%, it just shows you why this is such a monumental deal. The U.S. isn't just any old member, it's the political and military backbone of NATO. It pays for the majority of the alliance's defense. A fundamental break with the U.S. would leave NATO completely crippled. I mean, the warning from the Danish Prime Minister could not have been more blunt. She basically said that if the U.S. were to attack another NATO country, it wouldn't just strain the alliance, it would end it. The whole security framework that has defined the West for over 75 years would simply stop. And then, right when it felt like we were teetering on the edge of a cliff, a sudden pivot. Whether it was the unified international pressure or some other calculation, President Trump backed down. After a meeting with NATO's Secretary General, he announced this vague framework of a future deal and put the tariffs on hold. Now, the details of this so-called framework are still completely unclear, and Denmark has been adamant that its sovereignty is not for sale. So that leaves us with a critical question. Was this a temporary de-escalation that actually brought the alliance closer together, or was the mere threat of force the moment the first real crack appeared in the foundation of NATO? For now, only time will tell.